Today, we're heading straight into some truly mind-bending territory. Forget about AI writing bad poetry or, taking jobs. We're diving into the ethics of potentially creating artificial intelligences with genuine free will.
Right. Like living inside virtual worlds.
Exactly. We've got this fascinating piece here that really makes you think about our future role as, well, essentially digital world builders.
That's right. Our source material paints a picture of a future where these virtual spaces, much like the incredibly detailed worlds you see in games like World of Warcraft.
Yeah, those massive online worlds.
Could become home to highly advanced non-player characters, NPCs, but beings that might one day possess intelligence and even free will.
On a level playing field with us.
Right.
Or even beyond.
Potentially, yes. Or even beyond us. That's part of the discussion.
Wow. And this isn't just like some far-off science fiction movie concept.
No, the piece goes out a pretty broad but still, compelling timeline.
How broad are we talking?
It suggests this could become a reality anywhere from the next 50 years.
Okay, that's practically tomorrow in the grand scheme.
To maybe a million years in the future. So yeah, a huge range, but it really highlights the long-term implications.
And the increasing possibility, maybe even likelihood, of us having this kind of creative power eventually.
Which brings us to the central and quite profound question raised by the source.
Which is?
If we reach a point where we are the literal architects, the gods almost, of these digital realities.
With complete control over their physics, their fundamental rules.
And the beings within them, what will our responsibilities be? And maybe even more fundamentally, should we even start down this path of creation in the first place?
Right. That's the core of what we're exploring today, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The very first big question this piece throws at us is about their moral standing. The fundamental status of these potential future inhabitants.
Yeah. Are these future game characters just complex strings of code? Just data?
Or do they warrant some level of ethical consideration from us as their creators?
The source makes a really interesting point here. It suggests that if we intentionally set out to create beings with the capacity for independent thought.
So intent matters.
Intent seems key, yes. Then we might be ethically obligated to treat them as such, regardless of how they appear to an outside observer like us.
That's a fascinating flip, isn't it? It kind of turns the usual AI worries like on their head. We're not just worried about what AI might do to us, but what our very act of creation might mean for them.
Exactly. It hints that our initial intention in designing them as free-thinking entities inherently creates some kind of moral link.
So the real insight here isn't just about, their digital origin.
Yeah.
It's that their perceived value from within, how they see themselves, perhaps,
Yeah.
might be the crucial factor.
That's a strong implication, yeah. Challenging our external judgments entirely.
Okay, so if they do have some moral status, that leads directly to a rather unsettling question, doesn't it?
It does. The issue of their existence and whether we have the right to simply, terminate their worlds.
Blow the plug.
Basically, yes. The piece raises the incredibly weighty problem of whether we have the ethical authority to just switch off these virtual environments.
Potentially ending the existence of maybe billions of intelligent beings with the flip of a digital switch?
It's a chilling thought to consider, definitely.
Does the source dig into that? Are there nuances?
It does. It asks, does saving a copy, making a backup of their world, somehow get us off the hook ethically?
Like an archived copy absolves us. Doesn't feel quite right.
Probably not. And what happens if the original software is lost or corrupted anyway?
Right.
And then there's the starkest question. Is permanently deactivating their world a form of digital murder?
Wow. That's a truly chilling concept to sit with for a moment.
These are precisely the uncomfortable questions the source pushes us to confront. We're talking about the potential scale of such a decision.
Imagine the moral weight of ending an entire civilization, even if it's, quote-unquote, simulated.
The source really forces us to grapple with the profound implications of wielding this kind of, godlike power.
Okay, so building on this idea of our obligations regarding their very existence, the source then raises another really uncomfortable point.
Which is?
What about the experience within that existence? Specifically, the possibility of suffering.
Ah, yes. Pain and suffering in the simulation.
I mean, we're the ones who would be programming the very rules of their reality, right?
Right.
Including the concept of pain, presumably.
Right. And what's fascinating here is the source's line of reasoning. It suggests that if genuine free will exists for these virtual beings,
If they can really choose.
then the possibility of negative experiences, of bad things happening, must also exist.
Why, though? Why is that necessary?
It's presented as a potentially necessary condition for, moral development. Without the possibility of adversity, can true moral choices even be made?
Okay, I see the logic. Like, choosing good only means something if bad is an option.
Sort of. The source makes this nuanced point that trying to prevent all suffering might actually be detrimental.
How so?
It could be like removing their ability to make meaningful choices, essentially, and here's a quote, destroying the being it was previously.
Destroying the being. Wow. So it's a real paradox, then.
It seems to be. Is some capacity for hardship, for adversity, a fundamental ingredient for genuine existence and the development of moral agency, even in a virtual context?
But then, isn't that our role as creators? To, shield them from unnecessary harm. If we have the power to create a paradise, why wouldn't we?
That's a crucial question, absolutely. And the source suggests that a completely controlled, maybe perfect environment, well, it sounds benevolent.
Yeah.
It might actually stifle the very qualities we associate with genuine existence, like navigating challenges, learning from mistakes.
Things that often come from bad experiences, unfortunately.
Exactly. Removing that entirely might create something fundamentally different. Less like a being with free will, perhaps, and more like a sophisticated program just following predetermined paths.
Okay. This is getting complicated fast, which I guess leads into the source's thought experiment about establishing a hierarchy of importance.
Yeah, it asks us to consider how we might value different types of beings.
Comparing, what was it, those capable of feeling versus those capable of reason.
Right. It distinguishes between sentience, the capacity to feel and experience, and sapience, the ability to reason and have self-awareness.
Okay, sentient versus sapient.
And this distinction becomes important when considering how we might prioritize.
So it poses that direct question. Given a choice, would you save a real dog or a virtual saint?
That specific comparison, yeah. It really forces you to confront your own internal moral compass, doesn't it?
It does. What criteria would you even use? Is it about being real, physically, or intelligence, or moral character?
Exactly. The comparison highlights the potential complexities and maybe biases in our own moral frameworks when faced with entirely new forms of potential consciousness.
And this connects directly to the significance of how these beings might see themselves, right? Their own sense of identity.
Yes, absolutely. Self-perception.
The piece highlights that powerful quote from Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy IV, yes. The character Alphino Lavia, he learns his world was created, essentially, and declares,
What was it again?
we define our worth, not the circumstances of our creation.
Wow. That's quite a statement from a virtual character.
It really resonates, doesn't it? Here's a virtual being asserting its intrinsic value, its right to be seen as morally significant, regardless of its origins.
So the implication, according to the source,
is that if these future AI perceive themselves as moral beings, our failure to acknowledge them as such could lead to a significant disconnect.
and they might, understandably, see us in a pretty negative light for that.
Very possibly. It challenges our human-centric way of thinking.
Pushes us to consider that moral status might be something earned or perceived from within, rather than just granted by us from the outside, which then raises some very practical and ethical questions surrounding life, death, and the very nature of their reality within these virtual worlds.
Yeah, the piece then explores these practicalities, like are we going to allow our virtual characters to experience death?
Seems like a big decision. Can they even die unless we program it?
Exactly. It points out that even implementing death requires specific programming. It's not automatic.
What are the options? Immortality.
Well, if they're effectively immortal, do we make them invulnerable to any harm? Or do we simply prevent the finality of death?
What's the difference there?
The source brings up the rather unsettling idea of a character, say, falling off a virtual cliff and being stuck, endlessly suffering, because they can't die but are still subject to the world's physics.
Okay, so immortality isn't necessarily a picnic either.
Apparently not. It highlights the complexities of even virtual immortality.
And if death does exist in their worlds, what happens afterwards?
Good question. Does a virtual afterlife await? A kind of, gaming heaven or hell.
Or are they just erased, deleted?
Simple erasure. The source pushes us to think about what constitutes a meaningful existence within a simulated environment.
And how the presence or absence of death shapes that meaning for them.
Right, which leads us further into other ethical boundaries around how we might interact with these beings.
Like manipulation.
Yeah.
And their autonomy.
Exactly. The piece asks, can we just, insert ideas directly into their minds?
Oh, like Inception.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Or can we arbitrarily change their world on a whim, just rewrite the sky because we feel like it?
That feels wrong.
And do we impose our own moral code? Or do we allow them to develop their own, even if we fundamentally disagree with it?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
What if they develop morals we find abhorrent?
That's the tension, isn't it? The
Right.
tension between our godlike control and the potential for their independent development.
Where do we draw that line? Between being a creator and being a kind of controlling force.
At what point does our intervention become a violation of their potential to develop independently? It's not clear.
No easy answers there. And all of this really circles back to that fundamental question the source poses.
Should we even embark on creating these sapient characters in the first place?
Yeah. After considering all these other points, that question really stays with you.
It does. And the source rightly emphasizes that humanity, right now, lacks a comprehensive set of ethical principles for navigating these uncharted waters.
We don't yet have a well-defined framework, a meta-ethics, to guide us in creating entire realities and the beings within them.
Not really, no.
And that's why the piece stresses the importance of grappling with these questions now.
Yes. Regardless of whether this future is just around the corner or millions of years away.
Because our current considerations and decisions, they could set precedents, couldn't they?
They could very well set precedents for how we or our descendants approach these potential realities.
Okay. The piece concludes with a truly thought-provoking statement, doesn't it? Kind of flips the perspective again.
It does, suggesting that, quote, we ourselves are the non-player characters of reality.
Oof. That's a powerful moment of reflection.
Yeah.
Makes you consider our own perceived existence, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the forces that might shape our reality.
Definitely puts things in perspective. So, to summarize this deep dive,
Go ahead.
we've basically explored a whole range of novel and incredibly complex ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, from the basic question of moral status.
To the profound implications of existence, suffering, death, and autonomy within potential virtual worlds populated by maybe truly free-thinking beings.
It's really important to remember, like you said earlier, these aren't just abstract philosophical debates for, academics in ivory towers.
No, not at all. These are potential future realities.
Realities that demand our careful and thoughtful attention right now.
Absolutely. And on that note, we should leave you, the listener, with that final provocative thought from our source.
Which?
Be careful how you do so, though. You may set a precedent.
It really makes you consider the long-term impact, the ripples of any choices we might make in this area.
Indeed.
We definitely encourage you to keep thinking about these deep issues, maybe explore further into the fascinating philosophical concepts of consciousness, free will, artificial intelligence. It's all connected.
There's a lot to chew on.
Definitely. Until our next deep dive.